because these are videos that are going to be shared live on YouTube. And we are going to ask you to monitor your microphones and your videos as we participate in today's Zoom session. Today's Zoom session for Fit Day 3 is going to talk about we are differently abled, not disabled. And our moderator for today's session is Dr. Hickswell Douglas. And we all know Hickswell Douglas, right? Special educator. And he will be walking us through. I know he's laughing. I know why. All right. And our panelists for today are Dr. Keitha Osborne from the Michael University, a lecturer. And though she's a lecturer, you know, coming into today's session, I hear she's been talking to her practitioners on the ground. So we look forward to what she has to say. And we have with us, just wave, Mrs. Camille Budd here, Special Education Unit Education Officer. And she has direct responsibility for Braille and large print resources. So glad to have you, Mrs. Budd, here. Also with us is Mr. Jason Ricketts. Mr. Jason Ricketts is a former student of the University of the West Indies, and he is not sighted, right? So, I'm just welcoming all my panelists. And as a reminder, we are live. This is being recorded and we are live on YouTube for day 3 for our Forum for Innovations in Teaching. We will have 1 hour and we have started, or we're going to start at exactly 1:45, which is now. And so without further ado, I am going to hand over to our moderator, Hickswell Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me just use this opportunity to say welcome to our panelists and to our viewers for today's session. As you just heard, I am Hickswell Douglas, and I am going to be your moderator for the session. I am totally blind, but with my name being Hickswell, I want to assure you that all is well with Hickswell, and all will be well with this panel.
Absolutely.
This morning, we are here to have our interesting discussion. And this discussion is going to be, as I want to say to you, going to be a very interesting one as we discuss and explore this very interesting theme, which is we are differently abled, not disabled. And I want to tell you that that's a really very interesting theme. Over the years, though, the language of special needs and disability has gone through an evolution of changes based on the position of different stakeholders. However, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has subsumed all of these names under one heading, persons with disabilities. And I guess we could also say children with disabilities, learners with disabilities, irrespective of the nature and the severity of the condition. And so this morning, we are going to be guided in our discussion with a number of questions, pre-prepared questions, which I have before me. And I just want to do some preliminary here. There appears to be significant policy and all sorts of interesting things. And it has led to a kind of consensus designed to ensure that persons who are differently able have access to quality education. And when we talk about differently able, we're talking about those with disabilities, even sometimes those who are gifted and talented, those who have orthopedic challenges, sensory challenges, all of those categories. And as such, when we talk about differently abled, those are the people we're talking about. There also appears to be some marked increase in public awareness. and a great interest in all the things that surround this population of individuals. In response, though, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information worked on a special education policy, which is making its way very slowly through the nation's cabinet at this time. In the absence of this policy framework, however, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information has developed a number of initiatives aimed at advancing the welfare of our students with special needs, students with disabilities, and for the fancy term, those who are differently abled. And so as a consequence of that, we have a few questions that we want to navigate today. And the first one is, from where you sit, panelists, and reflecting on your own experiences, your perspectives, and your knowledge about the education system, do you think much has changed over the last few years with respect to how learners who are differently abled are being accommodated by the system? So that's my big first question. And because Mr. Ricketts has recently left the system, the learning, teaching and learning system as a graduate student, I wonder, Jason, what are your impressions of how things have changed over the years?
All right. Good morning, everybody. As Mr. Douglas remarked, I have just graduated from the system. And what I have heard when I entered university in 2009, it is a marked increase on what, for example, Mr. Floyd Morris and Mr. Hickswell Douglas had to encounter on the campus in the early 90s and early 2000s. So definitely with the advent of the new devices that we have, this screen, the software, the screen readers like the JAWS and the NVDAs, persons who are blind and visually impaired are in a better position to independently do their research and subsequently their work without have to be depending on persons who are sighted. Also, with the increase in public awareness, by the different stakeholders, we have seen where more accommodation is given, better accommodation is given to persons who are blind and visually impaired at the different learning institutions, with the University of the West Indies leading the charge, as well as you have the Micro Teachers College, and you have other blind and visually impaired persons being enrolled in other learning institutions, for example, Churches Teachers College, University of Technology, and IUC. So while there's a lot of work still to be done in terms of giving persons quality education, I must admit that based on what I've heard, what existed before my time, and what I have seen, and what is in the pipeline, there has been significant improvement in terms of the education for persons who are blind and visually impaired.
Mr. Ricketts, could you just tell us a little about what happened, say, for example, during your high school years? Is it the same, or are things significantly improved from that perspective?
While I was in high school, I depended heavily on the Braille, and that was in a time when many persons did not have smartphones and computers as well as tablets. But
Right.
based on what I have observed from friends and other individuals who are blind and visually impaired, everybody has a smartphone. Most
Right.
persons have a computer. Most persons have a tablet. So it is much easier for them to access the information in comparison to
Yes.
what I had to endure while in high school. I had to depend on my classmates to read what was on the board for me. I had to depend on persons to read my textbooks for me. But now, with the internet being readily accessible to everybody, those individuals, they don't have to depend much on sighted persons to get them. They don't have to depend much on sighted persons to get the notes for them, etc., etc.
Thanks, Mr. Ricketts. Being first at the wicket, you certainly hit the ball very far, very hard. And so to try and catch that ball, I think I want to ask Dr. Osborne, since she is working in the teacher training setting, to give us an idea as to what are her perspectives in terms of the kind of changes that have taken place, if any, to accommodate our learners with special needs. Dr. Osborne.
Sorry, I started to talk. Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I do agree there has been change. There have been a lot of changes taking place. I'm thinking back to my days when I was going to high school. That's a little bit away off, but it's still a part of our journey and our growth.
Yes.
And I could not pick up in high school persons who are differently abled to the more severe, or maybe they were mild, but you couldn't pick up certain things. But there have been a growth and a journey, and I agree with Mr. Ricketts in said that public awareness and accommodation have made it a little bit more known. We now have the pathway coaches, and that's where a lot of our students from the Teachers College will go out and become pathway coaches, and they provide services to and they cater for children in the high school level to make the way a little bit easier for them in terms of intervention and meeting their needs. We have more resource rooms. Before there were not so many, but we have more resource rooms or enrichment centers at schools now. We even have inclusive school in Savlamar, and I imagine more will come about in terms of that. Before, it's only Michael Care that had a diagnostic center, and now they have 3 more at other teachers' colleges. So yes, I agree, there has been growth and awareness. And I think more need to be done, and I also think more need to be exposed, because some persons are not aware of these services. They're not aware of these opportunities that are available out there, and they have their child with special needs or the differently able child at home. They're not able to access the service because of lack of knowledge. So yes, we have grown, and there's still more scope for it. But one of the major things we need to do, and through this medium, what we're doing here, is to sensitize others and make them aware of what is available, because things are out there.
Having said that, thanks for that, for those comments. But having said that, could you tell us just a little more about some of the colleges that are now involved in training teachers so that they are better able to deliver quality education to our students in special schools and in the mainstream?
All right, so presently there are 3 teachers colleges that offer a degree in special education: the Michael University, Sam Sharp Teachers College, and Church Teachers College.
Yes.
In addition to that, all the 2 teachers colleges, Sam Sharp and Church, and the other colleges on the Teachers Colleges of Jamaica, all teachers are required to do a course in special needs, teaching children with special needs. At the Michael, we have gone ahead, and we have 2 courses now that deals with teaching children, are making student teachers aware of children who are differently abled. So the entire population carry 2 courses that they have to do, 2 compulsory courses. So it's one, Introduction to Special Education, and there's another one that will deal with the resources and how you adapt, which is Special Education Method and Resources. In addition, there are other courses that Michael offer that is a certificate course in special education, a certificate course in special education, so that persons who are not trained as special educators, or persons who came out of the system before it was mandatory to carry these specialized courses, can participate and gain knowledge. regarding how to deal with children who are differently abled in the school system. And they are there, and they need to be catered for.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osborne. Very comprehensive response. Now, Mrs. Bodier, I'm wondering what the perspective from the Ministry of Education is like when it comes to changes that have taken place, or whether or not changes have taken place in the last few years for all learners with special needs, now branded differently abled.
Yes, Dr. Douglas.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Miss Dr. Osborne. You have actually spoken to quite a few of the points that I was going to bring forward. In particular, the assessment centers that have been set up at Church Teachers College and at Sam Sharp to aid the MICO in doing assessment for students who have been flagged as, you know, they may have special needs. And the point that you made about persons needing to know more about what is happening out there, that is one of the issues that we have addressed in helping parents to and teachers when they, you know, they might say to themselves, oh, my child, something, I need to find out what's going on with my child. And they can take them not just to the MICO anymore, because in previous years, Dr. Douglas, as you may know, in previous years, it was just the MICO Care Center, which is situated in Kingston. So that meant, and they had a branch in St. Anne as well. And that meant that parents would have to come from all over the island just to go to those two areas. But now we have assessment centers at Church Teachers College and at Sam Sharp. So that caters to parents, students in those regions. Also in terms of sensitization, we have within our regions what we call special needs coordinators. And these are individuals, we have one per region, which the ministry now has 7 regions. And these persons will go into, may, you know, identify a child in his or her class and say, I think this child may need some kind of support, may need some kind of differentiation in instruction, or myself as the teacher, I'm not sure how I'm going to work with this child. They can call the regional office. The regional office will put them through to the special needs coordinator, and the special needs coordinator will go into that particular school, not only to speak with the teacher, but also to speak with the parent of the child, to speak with the principal, to speak with other teachers, to say, all right, this child needs to have an assessment done. This child is going to need this kind of instruction in the classroom. This child is going to need this kind of accommodation within the school. So that's one way that we are getting the information out there to the public spaces. We have also had a training. It's called TCEM, TCEM, which stands for Teaching Children with Exceptionalities in the Mainstream. And that training was for teachers in the mainstream, teachers in the regular classroom. And that training it's to give them the skills, the knowledge to identify students, as well as what to do next. Once identification has come through, what to do next. Miss Dr. Osborne will be able to talk about scholarships for student teachers who are pursuing the bachelor's in education at the Teachers College or in special education in particular. Scholarships have been offered, and those scholarships, it's in an effort to say to persons who are thinking of going into the field of teaching that you can come into special education. This is the kind of support that you can receive. In terms of yes, Dr. Douglas.
Somebody just called me and asked me if I could just ask you to say what has been happening in the NGO communities in supporting the Ministry of Education to create change for our students. The caller just said that significant changes have taken place as a consequence of the NGOs. What can you tell us about that? The caller also said that they understand that it's also doing a little testing and providing a whole lot of services in terms of caregivers and so on into some of our school systems. Would you consider those as significant change?
Yes, I was going to speak to that next. Well, not particularly the NGOs, but NGOs, for those of us who are listening, mean our non-governmental organization. And we have NGOs, we have ones that cater to them completely. These schools, they will take students who have been identified as having a particular special need, and they have a relationship with the Ministry of Education where if the student has a special need that the school can cater to. In terms of caregivers, what will happen is we may have a student who has been identified with a special need, and this particular student does not need to go into what is called the segregated special education setting. So the student is not deaf or blind and needs to go into that particular setting. The student can remain in their regular school and have the support of what we call shadows. Now, shadows are persons who work with the student, work with the teacher, work with the parent. It's a holistic approach to keep the student in school and to make sure that the student can access what is being taught.
Yes.
So you might find that you have shadow support for a student with autism who doesn't need to go into or cannot go into a school that will cater to his needs. Say the student just lives too far away from that particular school. An application can be made to have shadow support, and this shadow will go in, help the teacher to keep the student on task, help the student to understand the rules and regulations of the classroom, help the principal, the other teachers, if the need arises. Say the student has to go out, in the play area or something like that. Things like that.
All right. Yes. What we're going to do, I'm going to allow you to continue because you seem to have a wealth of information, which I'm sure the public would want to be aware of. But having listened to Ms. Bodier, is there anything that you would want to hear a little more since you're actually training teachers in the system? Or are you satisfied? Unmute.
Oh, that's Dr. Osborne?
Dr. Osborne.
Oh, all right, because I was right. So
never mind.
All right, so you're asking me if what more would I want in the system?
Is there anything, based on what Mrs. Bodier just said, is there anything as a teacher trainer that you would want to hear a little more about?
I know a lot in terms of what Mrs. Bodier just mentioned.
Okay.
Maybe we can have a more of a collaborative effort that the students who are a part of the teacher education programs at the 3 institutions are sometimes enlightened and also sensitized to what is going on. Because some of them are not aware of it, and they will have this doom and gloom approach, and they're not aware. So a lot of time I have to say to them, there's a lot going on, but they're not aware of it. And that's what I was saying, one of the reasons in terms of sensitization, communication. So the Ministry of Education through the Special Education Unit is doing a lot. And, just for the Teachers Colleges to be a little bit more involved so we can pass on the knowledge to our students so they are aware of it. So maybe some videos or some brochure or something like that will keep them abreast of what is happening.
Okay, Mr. Ricketts, in terms of what you have heard, what areas do you think a little more could be done to ensure that the education of our special population will benefit from education for all as we move ahead?
While it is good to train the student teachers and to give them scholarships, I believe it would be important for the teachers who are already teaching in the system to avail themselves about persons who are differently abled. Because I can remember when I went to the Salvation Army from grade 1 to 6, and when I went to the Meadowbrook High School, you had some teachers who would say that they don't know how to teach a person who is blind or a person who is disabled. But I'm saying it doesn't take a lot. It's just for them to sit down and understand what is expected. So the ministry, even though it will take a holistic approach and it may take years to train the different teachers, but a workshop must be done, or a handbook on how to treat persons with disabled or how to teach them must be given to the different schools, and the principal or the relevant authorities should ensure that the teachers who are already in the system for years understand what is expected and not to treat these students with pity. We just need to be included in what is being done.
Thanks very much, but I think you have touched on an important point there, Mr. Ricketts, and I think I'm going to ask you to continue a little longer. When I think about the disruptions caused by COVID-19, I realize that some of our learners are more at risk than other students, and they are perhaps being marginalized by things that are not happening in the education system. What do you think can happen for some of these persons, since this population is most vulnerable at this time? And the big question is, what are some of the what some people call the low-hanging fruits, some of those critical things that administrators and teachers and policy developers, what are some of the things that these people need to consider in order to ensure that access to everything is not beyond what is reasonable for our students with special needs?
The thing with COVID-19, nobody saw it coming, but I believe it gives us the opportunity to reset. And in case there's another pandemic like this where online schooling will be the order of the day, we're in a better position to handle it. But I believe when, for example, a different able student enters the public schooling system, the administrators should maybe sit down with them and understand what works for them and what does not work. So, for example, to answer your question about the online thing, yes, the internet is available. However, all of us know that it's very difficult to adequately teach a person who has, depending on their disability, it's very difficult to teach those persons remotely. So perhaps the teacher can have one-on-one, even though many teachers may complain that it's going to take up a lot of their time and it will take a little more planning, but it's very important in order not to have, for example, the persons who are intellectually disabled being left behind.
Yes. Thanks very much for that. I particularly like, Mr. Ricketts, when you said none of us saw it coming, especially that both of us are visually impaired. I don't know what the other
definitely
about it. But I am wondering that, Dr. Osborne, you have been working with students who online. What is that experience like? And I'm sure you probably have one or two of those students who themselves may have some special needs. How has that experience been going?
All right, working online, one of the major problems that we're faced with is internet connectivity. To be a part of this panel discussion, I had to ask my family members not to be on the internet so that I would have the broad, the width, I could continue with it. And that's one of the major problems that we're having in terms of internet connectivity. And in class, some of them have device issues where the computers are overheating. they're having a technical, malfunction with computers and laptops. So we're faced with that. Some of them, it's overwhelming to sit down in front of the computer for a 3-hour class. That's the normal for a class.
Yes.
And it's day in, day out. So we practice where we have asynchronous and synchronous teaching in terms of giving them a break so they can do the work. And then it's normally not at the end of the class. We require them to submit the work, but like 2 days after. So they would have a little ease in terms of, the constant being on the internet or in front of the computer and, just the drudgery of it.
Yes.
We're faced with that as a major problem, the connectivity issues and the device. Some persons are without devices, and that causes a problem for them. And not to mention, some of the students, we normally ask them to have their video on, but after a while, I had to stop that because some individuals, their environment is not one in which they can have their videos on.
Yes.
In terms of it. So we are understanding and flexible in terms of that. So, yes.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Osborne.
You say something,
Mrs. Bodier, that you have been receiving a number of calls from parents and from teachers from schools outlining some of the challenges that they have been having. As a person within the policy realm, what kind of support, what kind of help do you think you probably know, what kind of help has the ministry been giving to help some of these challenges during this COVID period?
Well, I like that both you and Mr. Ricketts spoke about the fact that we did not see this coming. So it really has, it has put us in the position where things that were, were planned have to be moved along quickly, and things that were already in place have to be changed in terms of the approach, the operation. Well, I know that persons would have seen in the media, on the news and so, about the tablet distribution. That has also been taking place for students with special needs. We've had private entities as well as through the ministry itself that have been able to distribute tablets to students. I know several of our schools through our unit have been collecting these tablets, and since the beginning of school, they have been disseminating them to their students. We can always do with more. So we would always appreciate partnerships with anyone, any institution that can provide the students, because as Dr. Osborne said, there are some students who don't have tablets, and she's talking about students at the tertiary level. But when you think of our students at the primary level, the high school level, who will need that kind of support, it's quite critical now with the 3 forms of the 3 approaches to education that we have had to implement since COVID. The online approach, I don't know that the ministry itself can do anything about the internet connectivity other than to continue having dialogue with the providers, which I know our minister has been doing. And the providers have been saying that, they will work on it, and they have been working on it. In terms of the support in the homes for students, I'm going back to the students who have shadow support. That support was originally to be only within the school setting, but students are not in school. So we have had instances where parents have called, have emailed us to say, I have to go to work, or my child has a special need that does require someone else to be there
Yes.
with my child. And you would have heard in the media where the CEO has said that that is a consideration that the ministry will take on. It is in a trial phase. We have had cases where shadows have been working from home,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the feedback we have been getting so far has been good. The parents are very grateful.
Yes.
Because, you know, it's some of the parents, it's a situation where they cannot leave the child unattended.
Yes.
So they won't be able
Yes.
to go to work
Yes.
or so. So it has been favorable. The feedback has been favorable.
And you would consider that a reasonable approach in trying to address some of the challenges for our special population.
Yes. The point you made, Dr. Douglas, about some of our students with special needs not being able to come out into the public spaces because they have comorbidities, they have medical illnesses along with their special needs that would keep them from coming out during this time. It would be very dangerous for them.
Yes.
We have students who have severe physical limitations.
Yes.
They may be in a wheelchair, they are not able to feed themselves.
Yes.
And we have an NGO that has been able to provide, what is the term now? It's telehealth, but coming from school, it would be teleeducation. I'm calling in a term now, teleeducation. They have been working with these severe cases through that method, as well as getting packages to them. The ministry itself, as you would have heard in the media, has been providing packages of material, print material for students. And that will also include our students who may have learning disabilities and still need print material in order, textbooks, workbooks, things like that, in order to continue with the curriculum.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Bud.
Yes, doctor. If you leave me, I will go on and on. I have so many things.
That's what I just realized. You're too enthusiastic. Very passionate about all that is happening here. But just Mr. Ricketts, thanks a lot, Ms. Bud. Mr. Ricketts, what else would you want to see in terms of the technological tools that are available, that have been developed? What would you want to see that built in platforms to assist our learners, given and ensure that they have due consideration so that they can access and utilize what they have?
To be honest, I've not been interacting. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah, I'm saying I have not, to be honest, I've not been interacting with the online platforms since COVID with Zoom, but what maybe they can do is to find a way, for example, from a blind person's perspective, well, I don't know, but in terms of getting information across, for example, well,
all right, let me see if I can help you here. Am I hearing you say that for the population, say for example, at population of students at the Office of Special Student Services at UWI, they would probably want to have more interactive kind of built-in features so that they are able to communicate better with persons delivering content to them from a lecture room, or say, for example, somebody who's deaf may need to have sign language features built into the technology. I think they call it something like universal design so that more people can access. Is that where you're going?
Yes, there is where I'm going.
Okay. One brother has to help another. Anybody else want to make a comment on the use of universal design to help remediate some of the challenges that we have with our population gaining access?
Yes, Dr. Douglas. I hear what Mr. Ricketts is saying, because one of the things that needs to be understood is that online learning is not the same thing as being online.
Yes.
Online learning, as Dr. Osborne alluded to, you have to be able to meet your learners' needs without exhausting them, without
Yes.
making
Yes.
completely out of sync with their normal way of going about life, because
Yes.
the information has to be given, the students need to be taught, the curriculum needs to be done, but particularly for students with special needs. If you have a student who is dyslexic and
Yes.
has trouble reading, you know, it's in the online space, it would be extremely difficult and exhausting
Yes.
for them to be
Yes.
reading. So I know that the videos have been going around from parents on social,
Yes.
talking about how stressed they are, all this information, and they can't take it anymore. And if the parents are that stressed, imagine a student with a special need who has to take their time to go through material. Um, so the teachers, the persons who are providing the online material, the content, need to be mindful that the content must have breaks, must allow for breaks. The content must be user friendly for that particular student. If you have
Yeah.
an entire class and you have one student who has a special need, one student who learns differently from everyone else, the teacher must cater for that one student as well. So if
Yes.
it means that, as Mr. Rickett said, he hasn't really been using the Zoom platforms and so, but if it means that that particular student, you have to come out of Google Classroom and go into a Zoom session with this particular student. So this is where your other students in the Google Classroom and this one student, or maybe it might be more than one, I'm sure.
Yes.
You will
If I,
set the setting for that student where maybe there is a screen reader that the child can use. Instead of having to read it with their eyes, they can listen to
Yes.
what is on the
Yes.
screen.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
maybe
and
it's something
if I might add,
for kids.
sorry,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
What the host of the meeting can do is to perhaps send the notes to the persons, if, for example, the persons who are blind, email, so they can have an idea as to what to expect when they come to the class. Because
Yes.
sometimes when the host is on screen, they may be sharing using the blackboard, and I'm not
Ah,
seeing what is on the board, so I may be
Right.
disinterested.
yes,
So
Yeah.
that is what they perhaps can do.
And can
yes,
I
And
add?
maybe
and
Miss Dr. Osborne could tell us
yeah,
what could happen for the deaf.
Oh, for the deaf.
Yes. I know you may not be deafened, but you have been interacting with a lot of them.
Well, what I was going to talk about, and that will come across, is the use
Yes.
of assistive technology in
Yes.
terms of to meet the needs. And there are a lot of devices or a lot of technology that can compensate for persons who have disability to be able to be on par. So
Yes.
someone did mention the text to speech devices, and it will be good for persons who are blind, persons who have dyslexic, persons who have communication issues. There are also
Yes.
other things like they have this software that is called, they have various softwares. I'm not promoting for any company. They have one that is
Yeah.
called Math Talk that actually
Mm.
speaks the math language in a natural voice with that
Mm-hmm.
talks about the symbols. So be able to help universal design everyone. Because this is not only children who are differently abled. These
Yeah.
devices or this technology will help everyone because some students are not don't have a special need, but they learn differently. They
Yes.
also have things like touchpad. So some individuals, they still need the sensory things of stuff so they can touch the pad and it can write certain things for them. They have
Yes.
talking calculators. They have alternative mouse. Those are the high techs. But they also
Yeah.
have low tech technology which
Yes.
teachers can incorporate and
Yes.
have a partnership. And that's another important thing, a partnership with
Yes.
the parents where
Good.
partnership with the parents is very important, because
Yes.
the parents are now becoming teachers, or teachers
Yes.
are shadows. So we have to empower them so that they'll be able to meet the needs of their child and don't become
Yes.
frustrated. Another
Yes.
thing that they can use, I'm going back to low tech, is that they can use graphic organizers, because some of them are disorganized, some of them
Yes.
can't see the big pictures, it's become distracted. So if you can use the graphic organizers that would have contain less information, you can also
Yes.
help the parents to make flashcards. You can,
Mhm.
things like that. So the partnership between parents or
Yeah.
the caregivers and the school system will help a lot. Then there are some children, as we pointed out, that they need some special help. And Mrs. Bodier did mention that, like Google, no, Zoom have breakout sessions. And while the teacher is teaching using Zoom, she can have the entire class together. And then she can have breakout sessions where she can deal with individual students or groups of students at a time. Not
Good.
plugging
Good.
for my workplace, and that we are now sending out student teachers to go on practicum. And this
Yes.
year, the MICA is a year-long practicum where the
Wow.
student teachers, yes, the student teachers will be now out, and schools
Yes.
grab that opportunity to have the student teachers
Yes.
be able to help them in terms of teaching smaller groups of students.
Yes.
They can
Yes.
concentrate and help them with remedial work or whatever needs they need at that point. So,
Yes.
a teacher normally a class size of 25 or whatever if they're in an inclusive setting. By having the student teachers out on teaching practice, they'll be able
Yes.
to take some of the pressure off of the classroom teacher. Yes, they're going to work with collaboration and to ensure that the student teachers are on par and teaching what should be taught. But that is a way to help out the system in terms of that.
So
Wonderful.
in that way,
Hickswell,
therefore,
Hickswell,
in that, yes.
yeah, I just want to just pause here to do just like a time check, and we do have the chat and the social media pages to check on, and I'll be doing that for you. And
Yes.
on a Saturday morning, Hickswell, we have over 100 participants here, and the conversation is
Wow.
so interesting, right? I
Wow.
just want to bring some attention to some of the comments coming from our social media pages and in the chat, right?
Yes.
And Kalisha Jody Bear Otti has said that as an apps coach, I have hundreds of students who are being left behind during the pandemic. And
Yes.
Sherry-Ann says the wait is still very long at the centers. Kalisha again says that the wait is long. She has a list of 150 students who need to be
Yes.
assessed. And I
Yes.
know that a lot, the word that I hear it come up is access. And I did hear Mrs. Budd here say, you can reach out to your regional offices, and have the information reach to them. So I might want her to talk a little more on that, but I also want to point out Galaxy Tab A, I think this one is to Miss Osborne, that scholarships she's asking if scholarships or scholarship
Yes.
in masters, if it's offered, if they have a master's in, the special ed, I think it's offered. And Simone White says, I think special education should advocate more on policies and even more schools for special needs children. I'm going to take those three first, and then I'm going to come back. I notice a hand raise, but let's deal with those as we go along because time is going and it's such an interesting conversation, right?
So Mrs. Bodier, can you make any comments about any of the points raised by our moderator there?
Right. So the first point that you spoke to, Alison, remind me of that one again, please.
All right, it's access. She says she as an apps coach. I think this is apps. This is
yes.
Yeah. The
testing.
Right. And she spoke testing, need for access. The waiting list is long.
Yes. Right. So that you're going to find will happen. Even though we have the 2 additional centers for testing, along with Michael, you will find that each of the centers does have a waiting list. particularly now with COVID, because the assessment procedures have to take into consideration the personal protection of the student and the assessors. But as I was saying, the special need coordinator can speak to the case while they are waiting to be addressed. The individuals can call the regional office to ask for the special need coordinator. And the special need coordinator will get back to the parent or the teacher, whomever has made the request, to see what they can do in the meantime to address the case. What was the other two, Alison?
In the meantime, Ms. Osborne, you have any comments to make on the whole business of assessment and the waiting list scenario?
Right. With the assessment, with everything, there is the staffing is also an issue, and how many persons they can do at a particular time, and to ensure they get a correct assessment, a true assessment. So I know that the assessment centers do have a waiting list, and it's a lot to do with the staffing, and it takes a while for the reports to be generated and the assessment process to take place. So yes, there are a lot of children, there are a lot of children out there, there are a lot of students out there waiting to be assessed. And it's 3 assessment centers, and they do have some private ones, but the volume and the manpower is a problem in terms of that. The person asked about the scholarship for special education. I'm not aware of the ministry having a scholarship, but there are a lot of funding agencies. Check the newspaper, do some Google search that offer scholarships for persons wanting to do higher education past a degree. I am a recipient of a scholarship from one of the funding agents that I did my doctoral through, and I was the first person to get it in special education. And it was just by reading the newspaper, seeing the advertisement. Normally that agency does not do special education, calling to find out if it's so, and I attended the interview and I received the scholarships. So sometimes we have to seek out things, and sometimes it's a one-off situation that you might find, but there are agencies out there that you can look and you might be able to find a scholarship.
So am I hearing you say, therefore, am I picking up from what you have said, that there seem to be a wider public interest in supporting the training of persons to service the special education community? And
Yes.
if that is so, then that would definitely mean that there's a greater level of awareness, public awareness, and that people are becoming more interested in supporting the needs of this population.
Yes, and Hickswell, at this point, I would like to point out that in the audience, we have members of the diaspora. Shernet Bailey,
yes,
chairman of parents and in the diaspora. And I see Pauletta Ferreira. She has her hand up, and I am going to ask her to unmute, right? So that she can post her. She posted a question. I don't know if it's the same one she has, but welcome. I'm going to ask you to unmute now, Paulette.
Paulette Ferreira. Yes, thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, excellent discussion. And I was just led to ask a question about access, perhaps because that is what I'm interested in as it relates to language access for the persons from like the deaf community, those who are hearing impaired, who are actually pursuing the course at the MICO, and as a language educator, I am, always getting to know, are you big on sign language? How are they accessing the language access? And I'm happy actually sending,
Paulette, we are
students for.
We're not hearing you clearly.
Wow. Well, maybe what we could do is have Miss Dr. Osborne answer part one of that question while Dr. Ferreira listens in, because we're having a problem with connection there. So, Dr. Osborne, would you want to answer that part?
I'm not sure.
Oh, she's back.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, I was asking a question. I don't know if that, was said before, but I'm really excited that you're offering such a course. And I know that there are persons from the special education community who are perhaps pursuing that course. And I'm referring specifically to the hearing impaired, those from the deaf community. And I'm asking you whether there is language access in the way you deliver the course to those participants. Because I'm always concerned about the language and that level of access that our learners have, and they would have a special need, I believe, in that area.
All right.
Dr. Osborne.
Yes, I'd like to answer to that. I'm talking at the teachers college level, the teacher education level. All of the students all the special education students, they have to do sign language. They're introduced to sign language, and there's also a sign language club that would incorporate other persons who would want to learn and be able to communicate with persons who are hearing impaired, and also for children who are autistic, because that's another way or modality of communicating with them. I know for other teachers' colleges that the guidance counselors are also taught sign language, so that would help them to deal with students that might have other difficulty, non-special students, not interacting with other individuals in terms of sign language, in terms of that. That's what I can address at this point.
But do the presenters, the persons who are delivering the course, do they use sign language, or are the learners at a disadvantage because they are not hearing, quote unquote, everything?
Or you remember, so
do the presenters language access? They facilitate that. Just wondering.
Well, I know, Michael, I think there's one student who is hearing impaired, and there's accommodation made for her in the teachers college program. That's what I can address, what is happening at the teachers college level and what is happening at the school level. In terms of the classrooms, what are happening in the classroom, I cannot address that. I can talk about what is happening at my institution and what accommodations are made for the persons in terms of that. There's a lot of sign language. I don't think sign language is used per se when they're conversing with them.
Any other accommodations?
Yes.
For those who are hard of hearing or deaf? Is it a case, for example, as I heard Mr. Ricketts say earlier, that notes, lecture notes could be done and given early, that sort of thing?
Right, things like that are given for them. And we only have one student who is hearing impaired that I'm aware of. There might be others, but I only know of one in terms of that. And in terms of sign language, I think only a needs basis. I don't think it's a wholesale, because we do not have a lot of students who are hearing impaired at our university college.
Mrs. Bodier, how does the ministry treat with students who are deaf or those who are hard of hearing in the mainstream? I know the deaf are in the segregated facility, but what about those who are hard of hearing? Are there any provisions for those students?
Yes. Well, I was just waiting on Dr. Osborne to complete her answer. We do have, I think it's 2 students at the Edamame College of Visual Arts who are deaf. They came from the Listomere Gilby High School for the Deaf, and they are facilitated at that college through, I think they do have access to an interpreter. I'm not sure if the interpreter is always with them, but they do have access to an interpreter, and that has come through the special education unit.
Yes.
In terms of students at, say, like high school or primary school level, if they are not in the segregated settings for the deaf, we have an officer in the special education unit who has responsibility for students who are deaf throughout the island. And we also have, going back again to the special needs coordinators. Those students, for whatever reason, may not be able to go to the school for the deaf, but the students, the teachers, and the school are sensitized. An interpreter is not provided, but if a situation, say like when they're sitting national exams and they will need an interpreter, that is something that can be accessed through the special education unit as well. Other than that, the teachers are sensitized in how to provide materials for them that can be read, or they are given the instructions visually.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bodier. I think we want to
Hickswell,
bring in our social media friends.
Yes, Hickswell, I'm going to also recognize Diane Black and ask her, I know she has something to ask, but I just want to say that persons have been saying, panelists, that the iPads, the tablets that have been distributed need a sign-on email, and most of the assistive technology need to download, need an email. So what I'm going to do is that we're going to note that for further discussion within our ministry. I don't know if Camille wants to say something, but I want to say from Oral Lawson, he's asking, has digitization of the assessment tools, such as the IDRI, been considered, and how effective would this assessment be? So I don't know if you want to address that before Diane comes on.
All right. For the sign-in for the apps, yes, that's a point that I will make sure I move forward. The idea, though, is that what the tablets come with should be sufficient, because they are coming from the ministry and they're based on the curriculum, and the platform that is being used is accessible. I know for a fact that the platform that's being used does allow for text to speech, and it also has closed captioning for the books that are to be read. I'm not sure if all of them have it, but I will check on that. Digitization of the assessments. I know that the student assessment unit has been working quite assiduously on getting the assessments out to all students. So the digitization aspect of it, I'm not sure how far along that is, but it has been considered and will be done, because they do know that there are students who will need it that way, as well as it's going to be part of the online learning, because part of learning is assessment. So I know the student assessment unit has been working on it.
All right, I'm going to call Hickswell. I'm going to call on Diane Black now. Diane Black has been volunteering to interpret for the deaf group currently at Michael, and she had her hand raised, and I'm going to call on you now, Diane. I see your mic is open. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I want to say congratulations and just acknowledge all of the efforts being put forth to certainly the special needs population during this most difficult of times with COVID that, excuse me, that we are all facing around the world, and learning together and figuring out new ways how to implement the technologies that we have to provide, continuing education to our students. I just wanted to add up my perspective. Mr. Douglas, it's so nice to be able to converse with you again. We've been on a panel previously.
Good.
And so I'm going to speak to the issues that the deaf community are having. I'm not going to speak for them, because they do have their own voice and they have plenty to say, as many of you know. But when I'm hearing you talk about, possibly integrating a sign language technology built to these universally designed systems. And in theory, that might seem okay, but it's not an effective mode. But that's even so further down the road, because first of all, it's not going to be given in the natural native language of a deaf sign language user. But but addressing the current issues that are happening today, language access, and I'm not talking the the lower grades, because the deaf schools are doing, like Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf, they're doing a phenomenal job at bringing on deaf educators. The teachers themselves are deaf, so they're able to teach in first language to the students, which is the optimal experience, right? But on this online platform, we do have several deaf adults who work in education themselves that are currently taking classes in a teacher college program at a post-secondary level. So my experience and my concern is with the lack of language access. I hear about the funding that's out there. I hear about the aid that's out there. I hear about the programs that are out there. But I do want to shed light and make mention that, Jamaicans Disability Act that went in effect in 2014 still is not being implemented. I could go on because this is such a complex situation, but I'm just going to give you an example of what is happening. There are approximately, right now, there are 12 deaf adults who work in the education system within the deaf schools, who are taking higher level post-secondary university classes that are specifically geared to special education. So have that in your mind. These classes are geared to teaching special need students how to remove barriers, how to implement tools, how to make access better. And these very classrooms who have adult students of special needs that need language access are not providing the language, are continually keeping these barriers in place. It's a situation where the students have been denied interpreters because the school is not providing them for whatever reason. Therefore, these deaf adult students who are so passionate about educating the next generation of deaf students have pulled their money together to they're paying students. They have paid their own tuition, right? They've paid. And they have now also carry the burden of finding their own interpreter and paying for their own interpreting services. And because that is very expensive and very taxing, that is almost impossible to do. A group of them have been able to pull enough money together to provide to hire their own interpreters to have access one night. The remaining classes this past week, every night, I stepped in, and I don't live in Jamaica. I'm in a whole nother country. So you have a deaf community that has to reach out to another country to find access to language in their own country because they're being denied. Not only that, that is what I do. I'm a deaf advocate. My organization works in partnership with the Jamaican Deaf Schools, and I'm there regularly, and many people know me. So, and what we do. The most difficult thing was to be on the Zoom platform in the class, and I am providing language access, and it's a 3-hour class. And at a 3-hour class, you really need 2 interpreters because of the mental processing that goes on. The interpreter, will start to drop information. So we're there to assure the professors that their job is being done as well, that their information is being delivered to all students. I did not have a team interpreter. So one of the registered, fully paid deaf students then stepped up on the platform to give me a break and read the closed captioning across the screen, and he's deaf, and then translated into JSL, providing access to all the other deaf students. Meanwhile, he is a student paid in full that should be a part of that class. And I'm telling you, and I know I'm coming across, and I want to use the word passionately, but to be a part of such oppression, and as an interpreter, I could not say anything in the classroom. I cannot. I'm there to facilitate communication, and to be a part and to witness so marginalization, to be this community be so marginalized that he's having to interpret for his colleagues.
Yes.
It is so upsetting.
Diane, I want to thank you for that. I think I'm going to give the panelists a chance to kind of respond to that, but I must just say that we have run out of time.
Right. That's where I want
so I'm going to, hand over to Hickswell, address that, and then Hickswell, we're going to have the panelists say our final words. Yes.
Yes. I think before the panelists speak, just to, as a summary, just to say that was a very passionate piece of advocacy. I think people are aware for some time now that the deaf population has been having some challenges. But I think what would be very useful too is if some representation were to be made to Ministry of Education to see what kind of support could be made available for that kind of service. I find the ministry in my years to be very responsive in some things, and I think that this is something they'll probably want to consider.
Not to interrupt you, Mr. Douglas, but the deaf community has representation on the floor almost every week, bringing the awareness to this issue. And it's just swept to the side.
Tell them, keep pressing on, keep pressing on.
They do, they're fighters. They're fighters.
It took the advocacy of persons with disabilities many years ago to make a lot of changes in Jamaica. That's how our NGO communities managed to break in the foreground for a lot of things in special ed. Encourage them, tell them, keep on keeping on. One day it's gonna happen. Mrs. Bodier? And we're running out of time, so you just have 30 seconds.
Yes, Dr. Douglas. Just to say to Miss Black that the special education unit is not aware of that case. I'm going to ask that you call us 967-2312 or email us at the special edu@moey.gov.jm. We need to know about that.
I think you used your 30 seconds well, Mrs. Bodier. I think we have run out of time, and because we've run out of time, the system may lock us out soon. However, I just want to say a big thank you, first of all, to our panelists, then to all of our participants who sought to write in on social media, and those who were able to call in and ask questions. All put together, this has made for a very interesting panel discussion. It is my hope that going forward, a number of the issues raised will be taken to the right desks and solutions sought. We are aware that yes, the technology and all those things are good, but the challenge for persons with special needs remains in spite of the significant accomplishments that have been made in the system. Still have a very, very far way to go. And it is my hope and vision that the disability bill that was mentioned will get teeth soon. I know they are drafting some codes of practice, which will help to guide the tribunal in deciding some of these issues. Ladies and thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much.
Until such time.
Thank you. I also want to give my thanks on behalf of the Jamaica Teaching Council to you, Hickswell, for really moderating. I could not have thought of a better moderator for this, right? And Jason for joining us. Thank you so much, Jason. And
you're most welcome.
Perspective, Dr. Keitha Osborne. Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, the things that I am looking into the chat and persons were actually happy to hear what you were saying and giving them information. You know, thank you so much for even doing that research with your students, your practitioners on the ground to come and give us the information today. Thank you so much. Right. And Camille, but here, right? Again, you know, keeping us updated on the ministry's innovations. And yes, this is day 3. And, you know, day 3's theme, you know, is innovation. The best is yet to come.
Wow.
Diane, Holstrin, keep on keeping on. Love your advocacy. I think I saw someone put in the chat about, you know, our students may know, our student teachers may know, the public needs to know. Advocacy is the key. Yeah, and I saw persons posting about the MOE schools, the issues with that. And I know that things are going to get sorted out. We can't, you know, there are going to be glitches, there are going to be hitches with that. And I ask that we, you know, have the patience. I know we want it now because persons are being locked out, and that is not what we want. All children can learn and all of them must learn. And so that is why we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, the best is yet to come. To the viewership, still over 100 on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, coming up to afternoon. That's awesome. I hope you continue with us for the rest of the day. We do have another panel discussion coming up at 7 p.m., a fireside conversation, right? And that, you know, if you look on our JTC webpage, you'll see the schedule and you know, just join us because this is FIT, Forum for Innovation in Teaching. I am going to end now. So be safe, everyone. Keep on keeping on and keep on joining us at FIT 2020. Thank you all.
Bless you, Miss Cook. Bless you, bless you.